So this is the Looking Glass
Go!
A holographic display that brings a 3D viewing experience outside of a solo headset and into a more group experience for everyone to enjoy. I got this in the mail a couple of months ago and have been playing around with it ever since. I've turned some personal photos into holograms, did a holographic photo shoot, and even loaded 3D animations onto it, all to just see what they would look like as holograms. And spoiler alert, they all turned out pretty sick. But as cool as this device is it a device for everyone? Would I recommend this? And even more specifically, is this useful for 3D artists? But before I go into it, what exactly is this? Around Christmas last year, I stumbled upon the Kickstarter for this device. I saw the campaign video showing off some of the cool holographic tech with the idea that I could transform my photos and 3D animations into these cool 3D projections that I could view physically in real life, in real space. I mean, I've heard of holographic displays before. Even Lightest Tech Tips made a video on this company a few years ago, and they always looked awesome. Like, these displays always look cool. They just looked a bit out of reach, at least for me, mainly because of the price tag. But this time I saw this was going for 200 bucks, so it wasn't really so out of reach for me anymore. So I backed it. Fast forward 9 months to September of this year, and then I got this in the mail. This thing here is a holographic display. So unlike a normal 2D display, this device adds like 3D depth to your viewing experience, giving an intriguing parallax effect to everything that it shows. It kind of reminds me of the Nintendo 3DS from a bit ago. That might make more sense to the gamers out there that actually played with that. Looking Glass made it clear that their main goal, with their entire brand actually, was to bring 3D displays and the 3D viewing experience from a solo activity to one that can be interacted and experienced by entire groups of people. They described their displays as group viewable and a canvas for creators and a canvas for memories. What intrigued me the most was their idea of bringing memories and artwork to life, as they point out on their website. The Looking Glass Go is the portable version of their holographic lineup. This is like one of 5 different displays that they're selling, this one being the smallest. The other ones actually are just of various bigger sizes that go up to like a big 65-inch screen. That's literally about the same size as the flat screen TV I have in my living room sitting there right now. So I'm just imagining that thing as a holographic screen now. Today, we're dealing with this bad boy, porting a nice 6-inch screen that's about the size of a standard iPhone, but it folds. Yeah, it folds, unlike an iPhone. So it has like the same thickness as about 2 iPhones. With that size, it kind of fits right into your pocket actually, so you can see why they call it the Looking Glass Go. It's also fairly lightweight, so really just imagine this like a smartphone in terms of build and portability. And with this foldable design, it gives you display options to either stand it up or fold it closed to use again, like a phone. There's no touchscreen though, so you can't really use it like one. It's a pretty sleek design, to be honest, and since it is small and portable, you can pretty much place it anywhere you want, whether it's on a shelf in your house or you taking it around town to, I don't know, like show your friends your cool pictures at the mall or something. I don't really know. Like, I think it's better suited to be more of like a digital picture frame, just more innovative. A more innovative version of one. Around the sides though, you actually see that they have playback buttons to navigate through your photos, and the standard power button, a USB port, a headphone jack, and a USB-C port for both charging and connecting 2 PCs for desktop mode, which is important to do if you want to try one of the more interesting display methods with this device, but more on that later. If you're like me and you back this thing early, you got this for a smooth discount of 200 bucks. Otherwise, it retails for $300. They also have accessories available for it, but I only got this fun little picture frame because at the end, that's probably what I'm mainly gonna use it for anyways. Design-wise though, they really leaned into making this device as portable as a smartphone, which is why I keep making that comparison. It's small, it's lightweight, has a USB-C port to attach battery packs so you can indeed take it anywhere you want. My only thing with this is I don't know Why you would want to? I low-key don't really see myself using this outside of the house. I'm either gonna use it attached to my computer for some cool experiments, or it'll just simply sit on a windowsill flipping through some family photos or something. But I guess there is the option to take this outside and show the world your 3D renders if you so desire. But that's my thought on the design of it. Really sleek and pretty well made, but how does it work? So practically, when actually experiencing the 3D view from this device, the effect it gives is a bit different from what I'm personally used to from other 3D technologies. When I think of a 3D viewing experience, I think of like, I don't know, like movie theaters. You know, like you walk into the theater, get a 3D movie going, and you have these 3D glasses and the action pops out at you every so often. With this, instead of depth popping outwards towards me, the depth effect pushes inwards, as if the screen had like an inward box inside of it or something. When viewing it, you have to either orbit yourself around the device, or you can rotate the device itself and you'll see the picture actually orbits with you as well, as if you were actually moving around with it. The effect works with any picture you import into it too. With various amounts of success, the effect becomes the most effective once you start importing some authentic 3D content into it, like actual 3D animations, 3D models, or nerfs. Looking Glass allows imports for both of those formats and actually utilizes 3D space naturally instead of using generated depth maps that they do with standard photos. Normal photos can sometimes lead to less than desirable results with artifacts and ugly pixel smudging. I found those to be kind of weird. I found displaying normal photos to be one of the easiest ways though to use this device. This device can turn literally any photo you import into it into a 3D hologram, and it's easy to do. You just beam it from your phone. When you initially unbox it, it has a QR code that prompts you to download the smartphone companion app, which then guides you step by step to get you up and going, for you to like update the Go, connect it to Wi-Fi, and then boom, you're actually ready to upload pictures straight from your phone. You just press the plus button on the bottom, then select your picture, fine-tune some of the parallax settings, and then you should actually see your picture come up on your Looking Glass as a hologram ready for your viewing pleasure. And like I said, it'll turn any picture you beam into it into a 3D picture. So if you ever wanted to look at your family photos with that extra third dimension, you now can. And it's actually a pretty refreshing way to relive some of those memories too. The 3D effect gets even better too when you feed it portrait mode photos. Mainly because when you do, it uses the depth data taken from your phone upon capturing that picture, as opposed to just guesstimating a depth map from scratch like they do when you import just a regular photo. It uses the data for an even better parallaxing effect. So I would definitely recommend portrait mode photos over normal ones. That's kind of just the general idea of one of the ways this device works. By taking a depth mat, combining it with your photo, and then boom, now it's 3D. And it can even apply that to videos as well, but with severe limitations. I'll get more on that later. All in all, giving pictures that extra third dimension makes for a bit more of a natural viewing experience. At least that's what I found. Going behind the tech, when you dive deeper into the glass, there's a bit more happening than just depth maps and what kind of seems like magic. In their own words, the Looking Glass provides up to 100 discrete views of a 3D scene and presents these views over a view cone of roughly 58 degrees wide, which starts to make a little more sense when you actually just look at this diagram, and even more so when you actually start making your own content for it. Depending on where you view this glass within the 58 degree viewing cone, you're seeing a slightly different version of your scene every single angle. It's still gonna be your picture, obviously, just slightly offset horizontally. So if you have 100 slightly offset pictures of the same scene and the display shows you a different perspective as you change your actual viewing perspective, that is what makes the parallax effect work. The best visual representation of this tech can be seen in one of the main formats the Go actually uses to display these things, called quilts, which is basically a stitch of each of these 100 discrete views that I mentioned before. Depending on the display you have, the number of angles in your quilt actually will vary. As you move around the display, it'll show a different angle every single time. A quilt is only one of the 4 formats you'll be using to make 3D holograms work. The others being depth photos, a specific image sequence they call light fields, and even 3D models. I said this earlier, but what I found to be the best experiences for this thing is when you utilize 3D animation renders and nerfs, since both of those are actually just true 3D workflows. There's actual 3D space to show you when you orbit around your display. But what truly made me understand this tech was when I was experimenting around and I noticed that when I was importing both 3D animations and my nerfs onto this, by the end of the workflow, I was basically just uploading a quilt image. So it just boils down to quilts. My 3D animations would be rendered into quilts, and so would my nerfs. And once you understand this concept, making effective 3D holograms actually just becomes easy. But by far the easiest format to work with is the depth photos and depth videos. Again, when you upload them to your Go, it'll either create a depth map for you or use any that's included. And interestingly enough, it's also possible to get depth into your videos as well. However, not only is the workflow for this pretty much non-existent, but the specific display, this specific display, doesn't even support video playback. You can only play videos on this thing while plugged into your PC and inside of the Studio app. But even then, to get depth in your videos, you have to manually generate a depth mat yourself and render a video side by side with the depth mat in your original video. I mean, like, the workflow isn't automated at all like it is with photos, right? So we can't exactly watch 3D family memories on the wall, at least not yet, so it's a bummer. So those are important to understand when you're making content for this thing. But I still have the question, what can we do with this display? I mean, like, what can you actually do? What kind of actual use cases does this thing have? And is it a must-have for digital artists and tech enthusiasts alike? Or is it just like a fun toy to have? And honestly, that's actually pretty much my lasting impression on this thing. It's a pretty cool and fun toy to have. I found the Go display mainly to be designed and used for displaying holographic slideshows. This thought was even extra confirmed, to me at least, when you go on their website and you see that they're selling plastic picture frames. That's like an add-on you could buy. Like, I even got one for myself when I bought this. Like, that's a setback at all, because this is only one of their many display options anyways, and it's actually a well-designed option as well. So I found this to be a really fun and refreshing way to re-experience your photos, admire your 3D art as well, and relive some of your memories that you happen to nerf, if you happen to nerf any of them. I'm a 3D artist myself, right? So I was really heart-struck by the idea of loading my past 3D art onto this, so I did just that. I imported my mock 3D soda commercial onto this, snowy cabin render that I did, and this living room wall socket project I made a bit ago. Turning all these into holograms wasn't really a simple process of just uploading them. Like, I had to go back into my actual Blender files, re-render them using this specific Blender plugin that they have on their website. Using the add-on itself was actually easy because it would essentially just turn your render into a quilt. So again, with the quilts, you just set up your camera and then you hit the render button, and then it'll render like 66 smaller stills of slightly offset angles and combine them into one singular quilt. It's actually pretty simple, and it really doesn't really take any time at all. Like, I found it took 8 seconds to render one of the small patches and a few minutes to render the entirety of the quilt. So I also wanted to animate, just quickly 3D animate something specifically for this device, just for experimentation's sake. So I made a random sunflower animation, so that's right here. Maybe I'll make a quick tutorial of how I made this later, but I wanted to specifically see what a moving 3D animation would look like on this display, despite it not even supporting video playback at all outside of desktop mode. But it'll still play it though. And in terms of how they all looked on the display, again, even the videos look immersive. The image twists and turns as you view it and change your angle, and it's as if you were in the 3D scene yourself. It's just moving this time. It's also kind of cool that you can preview your viewport from Blender onto the Go display while working. So if you want an extra screen while animating in Blender, this could possibly help your process. Like, that's an option. I'm not gonna do that though, but it was cool to have. I also took the liberty to download and render some of the official Blender splash screens and turn those into holograms for this, which were already really beautiful art pieces on their own right, but now I can commemorate them in a physical 3D screen and on my wall in in real life now. Rendering quilt stills is a breeze, but the main setback with this Blender quilt render workflow is when you want to render an entire animation. Go figure, right? I already mentioned this, but this would honestly be my main setback with loading any 3D content onto this device. The process for importing 3D animation videos specifically was atrocious, man. It was horrible, and for no payoff too, because again, you can't play videos on this thing. So I used the sunflower animation as my test for this, which was a simple 200 frame animation at like 24 frames a second or something. So it'll be like a 10-second long animation, right? The regular 4K render took me about 5.5 hours to render in its entirety. That's actually pretty normal for my computer. Like my GPUs, that's the normal time for that. But then ask me how long it took me to render the same 200 frames but for the Go. But keep in mind what I said earlier about quilts. So it takes 1 frame and renders it 66 times. So doing that for each of the 200 frames means, if you do some math, Blender literally had to render this scene 13,200 different times, which is so funny to say out loud. But by the end of the day, that render took 33 hours to complete. That's a whole day and 9 hours. But by the end of that 33-hour render, I had 200 quilts to render into a single image sequence and import into the Studio app, not the Go, just the Studio app, but it would play on the Go, just to clear that up. And that's just rendering a first draft. God forbid you have to make any changes and re-render it. That's literally about 7 times longer than just regularly rendering it, man. Like, it's crazy. And what made it even more annoying was the fact for some reason my Blender kept crashing at 4-hour intervals. So overnight renders would get halted, and when I went to work, it would also get halted. I would have to literally remote desktop onto my PC from work every 4 hours or so just to get it back up and running again. And that's, if I even remember to do so, that was literally just the biggest annoyance of them all. So the animation part of this plugin is either buggy or my two 2080 Ti's are getting old or something. I don't know, man. And obviously the icing on the cake here is that you can't even really watch the video unless it's through the Studio app. So yeah, I just wouldn't recommend rendering video animations for this at all. Earlier, I mentioned you can turn your nerfs into 3D holograms though. So that's cool. Along with 3D animation stills, I found nerfs to be one of the best ways to experience this display. TLDR, a nerf is basically photogrammetry with different technology behind it. You scan things with your phone, it recreates it in 3D tools like Luma AI. That's actually exactly what I use. I made a video about it earlier that you can check out if you want a more in-depth explanation of how nerfs work. Check that out. As far as the Go goes, this especially becomes fun when you look to make nerfs of your memories. As in, if you and your wife are out in the town, right, and she wants you to take a picture of her in front of a nice plant, per se. Instead of a picture, why not nerf it, right? That way you can experience it on the go and experience it in 3D later, which is actually exactly what me and my wife did. We just went around town posing and taking nerfs of each other just to see how they would turn out on the go, even if it was a bit awkward. It was actually really awkward to just hold a straight pose for 60 seconds in public. When you load them up though on the go, they actually turn out to be super cool, despite the awkwardness in real life. The viewing experience is super immersive too. Unlike with normal photos, you really get to observe the hologram from different angles, like true authentic 3D angles. It's a whole new way to re-experience your memories because it really becomes immersive. Imagine if someone was hiding something in their back pocket during the scan. You could just find it in the hologram later after the fact. That's nuts. Although it's one of my favorite hologram methods, I would be lying if I said this would be one of my recommendations for every user. The workflow for turning memories into nerfs into holograms is a lengthy one. First off, it's really awkward to take nerfs in public, since you literally have to orbit around a frozen subject for like 60 seconds. People were staring and moving around us awkwardly too. It's a pretty awkward process compared to just a simple snap and shoot photo. And then second, the process of getting it onto the actual display takes a couple of steps where you record your video, you upload it to Luma to nerf it, hope it turns out well, otherwise you gotta redo it. Go to this specific website to quiltify it, and then upload it to the Blocks website to sync it onto your display. That's like 4 or 5 different steps in the process, as opposed to just snapping a photo and uploading it right from your phone on the Looking Glass app. That's like way easier. The viewing experience I find to be really unique, and truthfully, this gives me an idea to try it out some more. So I actually might make another fun video later where me and my wife go out and do what I call a holographic photo shoot. So come back if you want to see how that turns out. These were just the use cases I tested as a 3D artist. I have seen some people coding full-on holographic AR experiences on these things, or at least on the other displays. There may be a little more to these holographic displays than just viewing stills. If anyone watching this owns one and is using it in any other cool way I haven't mentioned, let me know how you're using it personally down in the comments below. But what are the pros and cons on this? My general thoughts on this. Overall, I think it's just a really fun viewing experience with some really cool tech behind it. 3D displays aren't exactly new either. Like, again, my earliest experience was with something similar to the Nintendo 3DS back in 2011. It's just, instead of playing video games, you're looking at 3D art. And from what I can remember, the 3DS doesn't really immerse you in the same way either. I found this display to be a new way to view old photos and relive past memories. Regular photos already do that, but when you add the 3D aspect to it, you feel more integrated into the actual memory. At least I did. It seems like nowadays we're headed towards a trend of holographic and VR memories now, and I kinda can't wait to see where that actually leads. This actually may very well be a stepping stone towards that. Again, the effect is good when you use normal photos, but it becomes great when you use portrait mode photos, and doubly so when you go out of your way to capture nerfs and load 3D content onto this. For the 3D artists out there, being able to commemorate your past digital work in a physical form while maintaining its 3D nature is it's a really sweet privilege to have, especially when you load some of your best work onto this thing. It still maintains the same level of detail you work hard to achieve in your renders while giving you the same 3D space to view your art in. The Go is easy to use overall. The barrier of entry is small too, given the well thought out workflow, and for anything that might be confusing, it's actually just addressed in their really comprehensive online documentation. And if you still have questions or any further quandaries, reaching out via the Discord yields some really fast responses. That team is actually just really on it. Okay, stop the video, stop. I want to call an audible right here. I want to put in a little snippet because I have a little bit of an update while I was making this video. My Go actually bricked itself. It's actually broken. Well, actually, I mean, it's not completely broken, right? Because the screen's on and the light's on, cool, but I can't use the Go. It's actually just stuck on this loading screen for infinity and beyond. Like it will not work. No pictures will show up. Even if I press any of the buttons, nothing will happen. It's kind of stuck on this factory loading reset loop thing, and it's just not working and not allowing me to actually use the Go as it's intended, which sucks because I really needed this to film additional B-roll and finish off the video. But that's not why I wanted to do the update, because they just sent me another one. And that's fantastic because they took no time at all to just get me up and running with a replacement. Literally, as soon as my Go bricked, tried factory resetting it, I tried unplugging it, plugging it back in, I tried anything that Brian from the support channel on their Discord, whatever he wanted me to try and to troubleshoot, I did. All it does is stay on the screen. That's all. The only thing I actually can do with this is turn it off and on, and that's it. And Brian from the Discord wanted me to get log files. I couldn't do that. He wanted me to try factory resetting it. I couldn't do that. And so the conclusion he came up with and I came up with, so it was mutual, it's just dead. It's dead. It's done. So he just set me up really quickly too. He set me up with just contacting support and getting me a replacement. And then they shipped this out really fast. It only took like a little under a week. Their customer service and their support is really good. And I can't stress that enough. Like, you have to, if you have any problems with the Go or even any questions with any of their displays, I recommend going to their Discord, going to the support page, and just either posting or seeing any of the other troubleshooting questions anybody else has. I was hooked up with a replacement, free of charge too. I think they want me to give this back to them so they can figure out what actually happened. But other than that, I mean, that was the update. I'm gonna get this other one up and running. Their customer support, is great. I put that in the pro section. They're fantastic. But with as fun as it is to use, it's still far from perfect. There were still some aspects I found to be quite whack about this device. By far, my biggest disappointment was the lack of video capability on this thing. At least on its own, at least on the go. Other displays that they sell, just not this one, but other displays can view videos. But I think this is a limitation for this one specifically because it's a portable display. Because again, when it's unplugged and rocking by itself, that is when videos aren't allowed. But when you plug it into a PC, like any of the other displays, video works properly and displays properly through the Studio app. Even then, the fact that you have to be both tethered and have an app running kind of kills the whole point of this device, don't you think? Which is why I say video playback on this thing is actually just generally a no-go. But even if it did work, getting 3D videos onto this is just a painstaking process anyways, for both regular and 3D animations. There's either simply too many steps like with depth videos, or it simply just takes too long like rendering 3D animation videos. I wouldn't recommend either, really, but with that said, I would suggest using the Go as a stills only device. At least that's what it seems to be made for mostly. I even asked a dev about standalone video support in the future and nope, I mean, it's just straight up not supported. At least not yet. Other quick drawbacks that I've found. The Studio app doesn't really support syncing on the go specifically, so the Blocks website is going to be your main syncing tool, or the iPhone app too. However, it sounds like they are working on an even better syncing workflow, so that might be coming. Also wish the nerfing workflow was a bit more streamlined, since I found nerfing to be one of the cooler utilizations of this display. Recording and making the actual nerf is fine, but to go from the Luma app to a completely different website to then the Blocks website to upload it to this thing was just too many steps. Perhaps they can work with Luma AI to allow upload directly from their side. That's just a thought I had. And the last thing I want to mention is more of a general note. I don't expect something this niche to be perfect right out of the gate anyways, but I did find some aspects of this to be buggy, at least upon release. Like how the playback buttons on the side would actually sometimes chug after flipping through 4 or 5 photos, or how there was a bug where Blocks could only upload playlists up to 100 holograms. Any more than that, it would just simply leave out and not sync to your device. That bug has been fixed though. It was just annoying to deal with right out of the box. But I suppose nothing is perfect, so despite all of its setbacks, I still find this to be a really solid piece of tech. Some aspects still need to be ironed out though, but this device has a lot of potential. And it's simply just fun to play around with and to look at. And I didn't even get to try everything there is to do on it. Again, like the Looking Glass advertises AR capabilities with some of their products, so that actually might be something to look into. But in terms of how I've been using this specific display, the Looking Glass Go, what it boils down to, at least to me, is a futuristic digital picture frame with a twist of 3D. Having this thing run a slideshow on your living room shelf will definitely catch some nice glances from guests. I feel like this device does exactly what they designed it to do. It really does bring a 3D immersive viewing experience into a group setting, now with the option of being completely portable. At the end of the day though, I find this to be just a really fun toy to have. Is it a must-have? Not really. But is it a cool device to show off to your friends? Yeah, absolutely. If you're the type of person that just likes having fun, innovative tech around the house, this might actually pique your interest. On that same note, if you're an artist that wants to bring your artwork outside of your PC screen and into more other physical spaces, this is a perfect way to do so. Ultimately, I just really grew to like this device, and for the Kickstarter price of the $200 that I got it for, I could say it was actually one of the better purchases that I made recently. It even inspired me to want to go out and do a Nerf photo shoot specifically for content for this thing. So if you want to see how that turns out, come back soon. But now that I'm done giving you my thoughts and reviewing this thing, there's really only one thing left to do.